I wasn't going to pick on Black History Month anymore. Not for a couple days, anyway. Then YouTube had to go and do it. YouTube had to make me do it. YouTube made me do this podcast. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. You're listening to the Colin Flaherty Don't Make the Black Kids Angry podcast. Here we talk about black mob violence, black on white crime, black on young, black on old, black on gay, black on straight, black on Eskimos, black on Amish, black on kitties, puppies, and turtles, all wildly out of proportion. And then we talk about the denial, deceit, and delusion from reporters and public officials and lots of other big people who help run this country, like the people who own YouTube and Google. We talk about how they're in on it too. So when one of our viewers, one of our listeners to this podcast said, Colin, you got to listen, you got to go watch this because it's so crazy. They just might take it down. I said, okay, got to do it. Glad I did. YouTube wants us to give them a hand. YouTube is calling for our help. I say, let's give him a hand.
This February, we're celebrating Black History Month by honoring those who came before us and by recognizing those who are doing great things today. So we asked your favorite YouTube personalities to share who they think is creating Black history and why. And every day, all month long, the YouTube Spotlight channel will share one of those stories on Reels. From Dormtainment to Andrea's Choice to Julesy to Ari Fitz and more. See who's influenced our most influential stars. 28 days, 28 stories, 28 ways to discover the world of accomplishments that create Black history. Go to the Spotlight channel on mobile, click on the Reels tab, and start watching.
So if we want to recognize Black achievements, Black history, people making Black history now, why don't we start off out in Chicago, where a whole bunch of Black people ran into the mall, stole a bunch of thousands and thousands of $4,000 worth of clothes from Burberry's store in the mall. Then they ran out, all on video, all lots of witnesses. But one of the people in the mall, well, let's see what she said.
It's quite the shopping spree. More than $4,000 in clothes. Trouble is, these young men spent 2 minutes in the mall and ran out without paying. Now Rosemont police want your help catching these shoplifters. CBS 2's Dorothy Tucker is live there for this story, all new at 6. Dorothy.
Where, Erica, the robbery happened inside of the fashion outlet mall behind me. It was last Friday, just around 12:30. Surveillance video captures 5 men running full speed down the mall. Police speculate they're in their late teens, early 20s. You can see them carrying an armful of clothes, merchandise they stole from this upscale Burberry store. 18 items worth $4,319.
Shocking, especially in such a mall with like so many people. It's hard to like think that that could even happen when there's so many like people around that somebody would even have like the guts to do that.
So our first nominee for Black History Greatness will be those guys who we have to recognize them for their courage. That young lady in there said, wow, I'm surprised anybody had the guts to do that. It's almost like you're a Marine going into a burning building to saving your other Marines. And here's another one that just a little bit of a twist. It's a story out of Philadelphia, a large-scale episode of black mob violence. Not by itself worthy of recognition since there's so much of it. We kind of have too much to choose from. But give a listen to this story and I'll tell you how this one turned out.
To this now, one person is dead after chaos outside of a Philadelphia high school basketball game. It all started when 24 adults began fighting in the parking lot of Lincoln High School. Then someone started firing shots. NBC 10's Aaron Baskerville is live outside the school in the city's Mayfair section. Aaron, you learned one possible reason for this shooting.
Yeah, Aaron, right now police are looking into several different possibilities, but one possibility includes one group being disrespected in a rap video by the other group. Behind me over here is where the school is at. It was on lockdown for about 90 minutes today. You can still see some of the caution tape is up. No students whatsoever were involved in this shooting. Police tonight continue looking for that shooter.
I think it's disgusting. Adults coming to a school, to a kid's game with weapons.
As officers had their guns out, students made their way out of Lincoln High School tonight. A shooting outside in the parking lot forced the Northeast Philly school on lockdown. Cell phone video showed the scene inside. Officers checked school bags for security. Nia Griffin was one of many students inside at the time looking for answers.
They were patting kids down. If you didn't have your ID, they would put you in a certain room.
Investigators tell NBC 10 about 15 men went looking for someone at the basketball game going on at the time. The school ushered those adults outside, but another group of men followed them. A large fight then broke out with at least 8 shots fired. Sean Henwood was a referee at the game.
The AD from the school came running in, telling everybody, get down, hit the deck.
A 32-year-old man was shot and rushed to the hospital where he later died. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross told us the school handled this situation the right way, getting those adults out of the building immediately.
The way some people resort to violence over the most inane, stupid stuff is just beyond comprehension.
Once again, a very important note, no students were involved in this whatsoever. Police did recover a weapon, but they do not know if it's the one used in this shooting.
So the guy who died, he's 32 years old. He has 8 children. He has 2 on the way. I mean, you got to get some kind of award for that. Having 8 kids and having 2 on the way. All I know is that when I go out with one of my lovely young ladies, you know, if I'm 5 minutes late for the date or there's a little speck of dust on my car, those girls drop me like a pile of hot rocks. So, sorry to laugh at this guy's demise. Sorry about those 10 children he left behind. But certainly, I'm not sorry that we're bringing this to YouTube's recognition for the incredible contribution that dude made to have 10 kids, at least 2 more on the way. You know, 8 kids, 2 on the way that we know of. I mean, that's got to be worth something, doesn't it? YouTube? I mean, the reason they had that big fight in the first place was because apparently somebody was involved in a rap group. And they posted a rap group dissing the other people. Well, all the people you recognize in your Black History Month YouTube, all the people you elevate and what you call the black community, that's their thing. They rap about guns, drugs, money, bitches, and violence. That's their thing. You elevate that. When people expose that, like good old Colin, you kick them off for exposing it and calling BS on it, calling BS on you. Just thought I'd remind you of that, YouTube, in case you forgot that little episode. I've kind of, I'm over it. It's your channel. You can put on whatever you want on your channel. But it's probably worth reminding people that this, what gets on YouTube and what doesn't. I mean, in a way, it's kind of like Jay-Z, right? I mean, Jay-Z, he's one of the greatest record producers on the planet. Not just his own stuff, other people's stuff. Stuff where people celebrate guns, drugs, money, bitches, and violence over and over and over and over again. Nobody's hiding anything. Nobody's talking in code words. They're making the videos. It's all there. I mean, Jay-Z shot his brother. Stabbed his record producer, punched his sister-in-law. Yet he gets celebrated at the White House, and he's held up as an icon of Black history. Okay, that's all good, but I really think he ought to get an award or at least recognition, not just for all of his accomplishments in punching, stabbing, and shooting, but for also the idea that he can sit there and criticize the president of the United States because he didn't like it. Jay-Z didn't like it when Trump supposedly said some shithole of a country was actually a shithole. And everybody looks up at Jay-Z and they said, Jay-Z, man, we're so lucky you're here to set standards for us. Thank you, Jay-Z. I mean, if you can get along with that, get away with that, I mean, somebody's got to recognize that for being extremely clever. I mean, in warfare, The people who get the most admiration are the ones who win a battle, win a war, not through brute force, but through clever deception and strategy. I mean, so that's, whatever that award is, let's give one of those to Jay-Z. Let's give one to the people at YouTube, too, because they're among his biggest fans. And if we're going to talk about black history and jurisprudence, well, we have to recognize this black woman who took pleading for her case up to a whole new level. And, let's just see what she did.
Back in November, 57-year-old Valerie Mitchell was accused of showing up to the civil courts building, threatening to slash Judge Jason Sennheiser's throat. Police say they found on her a box cutter with a 6-inch blade.
She was going to jump on him. She was going to cut his throat, and she was just laying for him.
At the time, she was charged with tampering with a judicial officer for the threats and resisting arrest for allegedly striking an arresting officer in the nose. The latest court documents show the case went to a grand jury, which dropped the tampering with the judicial officer charge, citing, quote, "The state has insufficient evidence to obtain a conviction," end quote. Well-placed sources tell Fox 2 Judge Sennheiser is fearing for his safety now. The threats put him on edge. Sennheiser was not called to testify as a victim in the case and was not even told the case was presented to a grand jury. In the original charging documents, officials said Mitchell started calling the judge and the courthouse with verbal threats after Judge Sennheiser ruled against her in a lawsuit on October 26th. He sided with a credit union, ordering Mitchell to pay more than $17,000 in car payments she owed and to return the car.
Okay, so she buys a car, rents a car, whatever. She decides she's not going to pay anymore. So they make her. So they take her to court. They get a judgment for 17 grand. She gets a knife. She threatens a judge who's in a wheelchair. She says, "I'm going to cut your throat." Then the district attorney up in that area, Kim Fox, and the grand jury say, "Oh, that's not a big deal. We'll let that one slide." Remember, the saying about a grand jury is a district attorney can indict a ham sandwich. So to say that that black woman is not going to be arrested and charged for threatening to slash a judge's throat is to say the district attorney of Chicago, Kim Fox, has decided that, listen, we're not going to arrest our way out of this mess. We're not going to put that woman in jail for threatening a judge. God, even the mafia didn't used to do that because they knew if you threatened a judge or killed a cop, that was going to provoke a retaliation that would be very, very, very bad for business. And so, Valerie Mitchell, for your work in jurisprudence, for your work in exposing and uplifting and elevating all the great work that Kim Fox is doing up there to make sure black people are not getting arrested for no reason whatsoever. Remember, Kim Fox, she's the state's attorney in Cook County, the district attorney of Cook County. She's the one bragging that they only have 6,000 people in jail in Chicago. That's a record low. I mean, she's doing the Rocky dance. She's got her hands in the air. She's running up the museum steps. The music is swelling. The papers, they're running up behind her. They're surrounding her. They're patting her on the back. Meanwhile, the district attorney can't even figure out a way to bring charges against a woman who threatens to slash a judge's throat. People in the Chicago neighborhoods are saying, especially the white neighborhoods, especially the well-to-do white neighborhoods, the ones that pay for all this Democratic tomfoolery, like supporting Kim Fox. Well, now crime is in their neighborhoods. They're starting to use words like epidemic. They're starting to use words like we've never seen it this dangerous before. And yet they look at the district attorney they support it, who's bragging about letting all these criminals out, and they can't even connect two dots. They can't even announce 2 + 2 = 4. Listen, if Kim Fox and Valerie Mitchell, the woman who's threatened this guy in the lawsuit, If they can get away with doing that, good Lord, they're way beyond getting an award from YouTube. I mean, that's Nobel Prize material there. And if we're going to recognize people, if we're going to help YouTube recognize people for getting away with things, with Black history and Black achievement. I mean, we've had a lot of black on white murders in this month of January, running up to the Black History Month. Lots of white girls, lots of blonde white girls getting killed. And the pattern is overwhelming. And the reporters keep looking at it. They keep going, man, I wonder what, I can't quite get my mind around what's going on there. The fathers, the parents keep looking at it. They're shell-shocked. They don't want to say, like, they don't, I don't know, maybe they don't know. If they do know, they're too shell-shocked to talk about it because they know they're already victims one time. They don't want to become victims another time by having all these reporters come in and go, hey, you just identified a pattern of black criminality against white women. Oh, it's wildly out of proportion. You are a bad person. So nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to give YouTube a chance to make some other black person a hero for going down to that town and calling him a racist.
Our top story tonight, a 20-year-old woman and mother found shot to death at a Myrtle Beach motel overnight. Now her family is coping with that loss.
Erin Edwards spoke to the woman's father this afternoon, and she joins us live from the Beachcomber Oceanfront Inn. Erin.
Michael and Caitlin, Coley Muirhead's father, says he's heartbroken after this loss. He says the girl would do anything for her family, friends, and her 2-year-old son.
This is your worst nightmare as a parent, to have your child murdered.
Colin Muirhead says the reality of losing his daughter hasn't sunk in.
There's no words for today. I can't describe how I feel. I feel nothing. I feel everything. I feel sad. I feel hate.
Coley Muirhead was a loving mother, daughter, and friend.
She was full of love. She was full of compassion.
Friends of Coley say she always put others before herself and was impossible not to love.
Coley would give a shirt off her back, So many of the things I used to get so angry with her about, She didn't have $1 to her name to put in the gas tank, but she'd go take somebody to Conway if they needed a ride to Conway. She just wanted everybody to love her, everybody to like her. And they did, She was loved.
Coley enjoyed playing golf with her family.
She was the #1 player on the golf team for a period of time. I played golf, my father played golf, and that's what we enjoyed doing together. And she was good at it. She was great at it, actually. She was good at anything she did.
But most of all, Coley loved her 2-year-old son, Casper.
He's a baby boy that is happy whenever he sees his mommy, and I think that's going to be the hardest part, because what do you say to a 2-year-old? That the only thing they want in life is their mother. The only thing he's going to ask for is his mother. He's never going to see her again. Ever. That's the hardest part.
Hey, YouTube, I've got a can't miss for you. This is absolutely 100% in the bag, guaranteed Black Achievement of the Week, Month, Year, Century. A law professor at Fordham says black people, just because they're black, are disabled. Capiche? She goes through all the excuses and all these things that are inflicted on black people, the poor schools, the poverty, the education, the healthcare, whatever. All of us know the 1 million excuses, of course, all motivated by white racism. And the professor, the black female professor, she wrote a big article for Georgetown Law Review, which appeared up in the Fordham campus as well. She said, listen, being black is just too difficult now. It's a disability. One thing she didn't talk about, but one thing anybody who knows anything about this knows, disability is the golden ticket. You can get welfare, but every once in a while somebody's going to roll in there and say, hey, shouldn't we make people work for welfare? No. You can get unemployment. That's limited. You can get workers' comp. That's limited because you actually have to work. But if you get disability, that's a golden ticket, mostly for the rest of your life. So that's what this law professor is doing. It's basically saying, hey, black people, we're going to take this entitlement thing up to a whole new level. We're just going to make it permanent. That's worth something, isn't it, YouTube? I mean, there's a town, NPR did a story. We did a video on this. NPR did a story where there's a town in Alabama where 1/4 of the people are on disability. It's a chocolate city. 1/4 of the people are on disability. I mean, they come in there and go, doctor, my back hurts. He goes, okay, here, take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning. Then they go, what about disability? He goes, you ever been to high school? They go, well, I never really got past the high school. The doctor will take out his approval stamp and stamp it on their disability application. It kind of goes with what the Fordham professor said. There's something inherently disabling about being black where they cannot be expected to function, so we have to give them a whole bunch of money. You know, this one's weird. Okay, I posted this over at minds.com. I only wish you guys could hear this here. But the minds.com version, the video version, has a translation of this. But it answers the question that I never see asked. I mean, how often have you seen in print or TV, radio, whatever, on our YouTube channels, on this minds.com channel, on Twitter and Facebook, how often have you seen people talking about black history where they're talking about we built the pyramids? That's a thing, right? People get into it and they go, oh yes, Colin, we got the DNA here, we got the carvings there, we got the proof here, they all came from Kemet, they all came up and built the pyramids, and they civilized it, and they brought all this, they invented mathematics, they invented this, they invented that, they invented spaceships. That's why black people are now traveling the galaxy in magical spaceships that we see in the movie Black Panthers, too. Let's just say this whole black history thing it's a little bit, it's a little weird, okay? But doesn't stop people from getting into it. See, everybody, I mean, in my family, I'm kind of like the historian. I'm the one who, I've done a couple I've done at least 3 major historical projects for my family. I do one where my grandfather came from Germany in the late 1800s. He wrote a diary, 200 pages. He wrote it in German. Thing sat there for like 50 years before somebody translated it. I went and got it, had it translated. That was a pretty big deal. My dad was a picture taker. He took 7,500, we had albums, he had like 100 albums or 75 albums, 100 pictures each. There was like 7,500 pictures in these albums. I mean, every week in the life of our family, there's some picture in this album. So I digitized them all, tagged them all, they're all on my computer. And I just gave, if you were in that album, I sent you a copy of it. That was a big historical deal. My brother Kevin, he was in Vietnam. He died in Vietnam, and once a year, the guys in his group, I don't know if they call it a battalion or unit or whatever, they all get together and they have a reunion somewhere where they remember their fallen brothers, including my brother. So I went down there once and I took my video camera and I talked to everybody that was there. When my brother died, I made a video out of it. That was a historical thing. But I think there's a couple different ways to look at history, right? The history is, you can either look at history as something that inspires you, something that reminds you what you have to do, what you can do, especially if your immediate family, where they came from, the challenges they overcame, and how you have to overcome some of the same challenges and what you can do. That's one way of looking at it. But when we see the history, the black history that YouTube is celebrating, what we see more often than not is people saying, yeah, here's our history. You stole it from us, so give us some money and some more free stuff. We built the pyramids. Give us some free stuff. Oh, you took our music. Give us some free stuff. That's what history is. That's what black history is to many, many people. So we can use history to propel us forward or history to hold us back. But anyway, so has anybody got around to asking the Egyptians what they think of these claims that people from America, African Americans and their descendants went to Egypt and built the pyramids? Has anybody got around to asking them? Turns out they have. And so on this thing I posted at myminds.com/Colin Flaherty site, it's on Egypt TV. It looks like it's New Year's or something. And there's this woman talking to these two guys. It lasts about 3 minutes and it's in Egyptian, so I won't put it here.
لحد يعني لحظات قليلة إنما كذاب وملاوع ومجنون بجنون الكرسي والسلطة.
But they have subtitles, and the subtitles are, this lady goes, what do you think about black people in America trying to steal our history? Oh my God, these guys went ballistic. That anybody would try to culturally appropriate Egyptian history. They did not like it. And so, I don't know if we should recognize those guys from Egypt or not. There's got to be some kind of way we can recognize those guys. Oh yeah, I know how. Well, you are contributing to the conversation. You're keeping the conversation going by saying black history is nothing but a bunch of made up BS. Yes, isn't that okay to say? Isn't that okay to say that stuff as long as you keep the conversation going? How many times have we heard that? How many millions of times have we heard that? Colin, white people are all racist. You know that because we took little laser scans of their eyeballs when they watch movies, and that proved conclusively that white people are racist. And 2 years later, somebody comes back and says, "Oh yeah, we can't reproduce that experiment." Yeah, in other words, what you said is all made up. They go, well, maybe it was made up. Maybe our facts were wrong, but we contributed to the conversation. So now can I have some more free stuff? It's very difficult to get to a level of scorn for people that talk like that under very serious circumstances with a whole lot of stuff at stake. But we're not even touching how ridiculous they truly are. So if we're going to name some heroes for black history, people making black history, I mean, good Lord, the people at Atlantic Magazine, they've got to get some kind of recognition. It was called Night for Freedom, a party put on by Cernovich and McGinnis and Stefan Molyneux, Gavin McGinnis, about a month ago in Manhattan. And I was talking to a guy from the New Yorker. He recognized me. I met him once up in New York. The way it works is when you meet a reporter from the New York Times or the New Yorker or Wall Street Journal, if you talk to them on the phone and you tell them what is happening without sounding like a complete nut job, they don't want to hear it. So that's what happened with Atlanta. That's what happened with my experience with New Yorker and the New York Times. It's like when I'm looking these guys in the eye, when I'm telling them the things that I know, and I'm telling them the things that I've done. I mean, basically it's like, hey, I got a black dude out of prison. Did you ever get anybody out of prison? No, doing a story about cops writing too many parking tickets doesn't count. So when we go eyeball to eyeball about who's got the most notches, I don't have any problem looking them in the eye and say, hey, your belt looks a little meager there. No, getting hired by a newspaper is not a notch. That's an opportunity to get notches. Being a reporter at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or the New Yorker is not by itself an accomplishment. And so I met one of the reporters from the Atlantic came up to me. And he introduced himself. And he goes, well, Colin, you probably think I'm fake news. So I don't know. I don't really use that expression, but I do know you guys are down with the cause. You publish one side of this. You never published any pushback. You published Ta-Nehisi Coates. His whole life story is white people suck. White people are relentless predators on black people. I said, you never do one. I mean, it's relentless every month here. I mean, every month. It's not just one article a month. It's a whole bunch of articles. And what was weird is, God, this guy had some good acting chops. He looked at me like he really didn't know what I was talking about. And if I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I really haven't read The Atlantic for about 6 months, but the last time I read it, it was all 100% black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. That's what they do there. I thought, man, did those guys, have a turnaround and nobody told me about it? Because that's kind of what he was saying. He goes, well, Colin, you might not know this, but in the, in our internal website, there's a lot of pushback on that. I said, did you ever publish any of that pushback? Do you ever publish anything saying Black Lives Matter is part of the biggest hoax of this generation? Do you ever do anything at all like that? And he kind of assured me that he did. So, of course, I wasted 20 minutes of my time. The next couple of hours, I figured out a way to look up some old articles, from the newest articles from Atlantic, and it was just one thing after another, including this one. It was crazy. I'd even forgotten did this article. I did it about a week before I saw this guy. Atlantic magazine publishes an article saying white people moving into black neighborhoods causes black people to commit crime, and white people moving into black neighborhoods causes cops to brutalize black people. I mean, it's hard. I mean, if you're going to aspire to that level of ridiculousness, certainly somebody on Black History Month at YouTube has to recognize the greatness of that accomplishment. So why don't we run through this Atlantic article, this little bit we did on the Atlantic article about a month or so ago, just as a reminder to YouTube that, boy, you have so many choices for so many awards for people making Black history. And to me, right now, the biggest item in Black history are the people who are perpetuating the greatest lie of our generation, the hoax of Black victimization. That's the greatest hoax of our lifetime. I mean, that's got to be worth some attention from YouTube, doesn't it? Boy, this is the second one of these stories we've done in the last day or so. A story where I just won't blame you if you think that the stuff you are about to hear is an exaggeration, that I'm just blowing things up to make a point. This latest case involves white people moving into black neighborhoods. You know what happens when white people move into black neighborhoods? They cause crime. Because everybody knows that if you took all the cops out of the black neighborhood, put them in the white neighborhood, you'd find the same kind of crimes and the same kind of amounts. And the only reason that all these black people are getting arrested for no damn reason whatsoever is white racism from the cops, from the judge, from the jury, from the prosecutors, from the court-appointed psychiatrists, from everybody. It's all a bunch of racism. That's the only reason why. I think the biggest first time I heard this fairy tale was when I heard John Conyers testifying in Congress that the only reason more black people are in jail is because of over-policing. And he always presents these things as if it's kind of a fact that everybody knows. Colin, you didn't know that? You're probably the only person who didn't know that, Colin. Next time I heard it was a few weeks later when the biggest minister in the humble burg of Wilmington, Delaware, got on the channel sponsored by the Wilmington City Council, looked in the camera in the company of the city's PR director and two students who he was supposed to be mentoring. And he reminded everybody that the only reason the crime is so big in Wilmington is because they put all the cops in the black neighborhoods. They don't put them in the white neighborhoods, because if you put the cops in the white neighborhoods, you find the same kind of crime and violence and mayhem and disaster you find in black neighborhoods. Everybody knows that. Colin, why don't you know that? You're not really that smart, are you? Are you, Colin? Next time I heard it was in Manhattan. City councilman and a couple of other New York City councilmen and a black councilman, a black moderator, and a couple of white professors, they were all talking about gentrification and what a catastrophe that was for their neighborhood. And what's the worst thing that could happen to your neighborhood? White people can move in. What are the early signs? A white jogger. What's another sign? A white couple pushing a stroller through your neighborhood, a black neighborhood. Oh no, can't have that. I mean, I was waiting for one of these guys to stand up and, start screaming through the audience out the theater doors, yelling, "The white people are coming, the white people are coming, to arms, the white people are coming." On some level, though, we do have to start thinking about how you have all these public officials all over the country saying white people are not welcome in our neighborhood. This racial venom, this black on white hostility dripping from every one of their comments. You have to wonder. No, you don't have to wonder. We can observe it. We can see that. We can see the venom. We can see the hostility. And we can see the violence all existing in the same quantities in the same places all over the country. Then people come to us and they go, "Well, Colin, I don't know. I don't know how you could ever say those things are related. That's kind of crazy." Now we come to the Atlantic magazine, the venerable Atlantic magazine. This is one of the oldest, most respected magazines in America. Parentheses, that means liberals have been supporting it and reading their stories for a very long time. A couple years ago, the Atlantic decided they were not going to fall behind any magazine when it comes to being down with the cause. So they started publishing stories by the great Ta-Nehisi Coates, a fraud we've exposed on these pages many a time. I mean, all he does is he writes books about his life story, and the life story is the same. I mean, his life story is, I grew up in Baltimore, and every time I stuck my head out of my house, I got beat up by or chased by a bunch of black people. And oh, by the way, that's the fault of white racism, and any idiot could see that. Why can't you see that, Colin? This guy flies around the world on behalf of the Atlantic. Goes to the Aspen Festival of Ideas. Then he jets over on private planes. Then he jets over to Paris with his family. And now we've got these editors at the Atlantic. They're carrying on. They're doubling down because this is what happens when white people move into a black neighborhood. We have conditions for more surveillance and more misconduct. Okay, the story begins with a parade. Every year they have a Caribbean Day parade there. I forget what it's called, but it's they call it a Caribbean Day parade, but it's really a black parade. And every year they drink. There's lots of drinking in the daytime and the evening. The parades at night goes on all night. Lots of property destruction, mayhem, violence, disregarding police orders, that kind of stuff. 2-3 years ago, one of the top aides to the governor of New York was shot and killed. That got everybody's attention. They were saying, "Hey, that's been happening for a long time at that parade. Is that really a normal thing now?" This year, even Mayor de Blasio got sick of it. So he put a bunch of cops in there, put a bunch of horse cops and lots of policing there. It turns out that having police causes crime. And that's how this article begins. After they got one of these, what a racket this journalism thing is. You get some idiot to say anything and you inflate them and then make it seem like they're much more important and much more interesting than they really are. So they're talking about this, what's it called? The Jouvert parade. It derives its name from a Creole term for daybreak. And, went on and on and on. Then they get to the part where they go, "Well, why are so many people being arrested over there? What's the problem?" Here's Imani Henry, the president of the Police Accountability Group Equality for Flatbush, parentheses, that means he's unemployed or on welfare, and he's got a lot of spare time to put together groups that consist of him and some willing reporter that he dupes on occasion, such as right now. Let's hear what Mr. Imani Henry has to say. Quote, there's a criminalization of our neighborhood. He believes, Mr. Imani Henry believes it is part of a stepped-up law enforcement as part of a larger pattern of increased surveillance in gentrifying areas. And the police actions have coincided with increased gentrification. That claim is not just speculative, says the reporter. After the past 2 decades, gentrification has become a norm, blah, 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 blah. And this is what happens. This is what really happens in gentrification. They often leave out a critical side effect that disproportionately affects communities of color. We are, of course, talking about criminalization. Isn't that one of the great words of the last 20 years? We are criminalizing you. So if you go out and break into my car and I catch you, you are not committing a crime. I am criminalizing you. The ability of the liberals to turn these words around and to use the passive voice and just invent things is limitless. George Orwell said, control the word, control the thought. And this is in action every day whenever you see a word like criminalization. Atlantic Magazine, in for a dime, in for a dollar, just goes on. One of the expectations has to do with the perception of safety and public order. You guys didn't believe me when I told you that the expectation of safety is a white thing, did you? You didn't believe when I talked about that article down in Baltimore called Baltimore, you're breaking my heart. Dozens of black people, including people who worked for NPR and lots of other news sites in Washington, Baltimore, took to the web to condemn that woman for writing an article about crime in Baltimore, even though she came out and said, oh, this is not about race. Oh, they got that squared away really quickly when they said, oh, hell yeah, it's about race. It's about your race, your expectation of safety, just because you're a white person. Well, that's not how we roll in Baltimore. That's not how they roll in New York with Mr. Hamani. Let me just blow through some of this article. Long-term residents begin to find themselves tangled up in a criminal justice system for so-called quality of life crimes. Where police are drawn to neighborhoods where they didn't necessarily enforce nuisance laws before. Nuisance, yeah, I'm walking down the street, somebody punches me in the face. Yes, that's definitely a nuisance. Here we go. It's not a question of how many people are committing crime. It's a question of where police are directing their law enforcement sources, said Mr. Butler. This guy's great, Paul Butler. He's the former federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. Does anybody remember his name? If you do, I'll give you lots and lots of extra brownie points for that because I didn't remember his name. Wasn't 100% sure anyway. But I kind of thought it was this one guy. Let's finish this quote. It's not a question of how many people are committing crime. It's a question of where police are directing their law enforcement resources, because wherever they direct the resources, they can find the crime. This guy was a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. When he left, he became a law professor. He wrote a big article in the Washington Post saying black jurors should not vote to convict black defendants because there's too much white racism built into the system. Because cops are always picking on black people, letting white people getting away with all this crime. How about a little bit of racial jury nullification? That's Paul Butler. Keep it up, Butler. Atlantic will give you your own private plane, too. Blah, blah, blah. San Francisco, disproportionate strike, blah, blah, blah. The white people are taking over. The gentrifiers, they don't want to share. They want to take over. Yeah, all those white hipsters, they move into a neighborhood. They don't want to share. They just want to be able to walk down to their coffee shop in their sandals and in their gender-neutral garbs. That's all they want. According to Butler, here's what that is. They're not wanting to share. That's taking over. And one of the tools they can use to take over public spaces, says Mr. Butler, is law enforcement. This Butler, good Lord. Yeah. Then he talks about the famous Spike Lee case, where Spike Lee, dad is up there doing drum circles in some part of Brooklyn, I think, and the neighbors go, "Hey, do you think we can, limit the drum circles to 12 hours per day?" Spike Lee went crazy when that happened. blah, blah, blah. Lots more stories about all the cops are attacking black people for no reason whatsoever. Da, da, da. Oh, here we go. Now we're talking to Kathleen Lanier. Now they bring up Kathleen Lanier. She was the former police chief of Washington, D.C. from 2007 to 2016. What happened to your city during that time, Kathy? Is there one human being on this planet besides you who think you made a difference to make Washington safer? Or did Washington become a more dangerous chocolate and dirty city on your watch? Did your crime numbers go down, Kathy? Are there lots of places you can go in Washington now where you couldn't go before? Or is it just the opposite? I've done so many stories on Washington, D.C. I think that the most troubling one was the one we did where they started a program about 10 years ago where they gave murderers second chances, kids, teenagers. All of a sudden, they have hundreds and hundreds of people committed who are guilty of murder and rape and unbelievably horrific violence. They're back on the street doing it again because some idiot like Kathy Lanier and the people around Washington, D.C., they know that that one crime doesn't define my life. So go out there and be a good person. I know. I wouldn't believe that either if I didn't see the videos of it. Some residents in these ghettos can be overwhelmed by the sudden increase in security, which is not always confined to public law enforcement. They're actually hiring security guards to keep themselves safe. Why is that? Why can't a white person walk into a black neighborhood? Why do they feel the need for security and police? What's that all about? Are they making that up? Are they imagining that? Are they? Goes on and on and on. Lots more stories about, oh man, these cops are. That also says, the more white people, that means the more opportunities there are for police abuse, because everybody knows cops are always abusing black people, right? Gentrification and police violence don't necessarily have a casual relationship. Period. And okay, let's let the other shoe drop. But stepped up law enforcement does create conditions for more potential misconduct. Good Lord. People make a living writing that idiotic stuff. You couldn't get away with that in 6th grade where I went to school. Sister Marian DeShanta would say that doesn't make sense. But that's the famous Obama construction he got away with so many times over so many years. He would say, well, I believe in competition. That's why we have to nationalize healthcare. I believe in free enterprise. That's why we have to take over GM. I believe in fairness. I believe in one country, not a red country, not a blue country. I believe in the United States of America. That's why we have to have special programs for black people, including one called Academic Excellence for African Americans. I mean, that's what all this is. And on they go. Eric Garner, Butler. Whew. Okay, here's one of my favorite parts here. And don't make the black kids angry. We spend a lot of time talking about Bronx juries. Whether you're in the Bronx or Brooklyn, you get all these white people moving into these neighborhoods. If somebody gets clunked on the head, they're not going to do the witness intimidation thing. They're going to see, if they see something, they're going to say something. They're going to show up in court. They don't care about stitches for snitches. They're going to go to court. They're going to testify. They're going to get called to jury duty. They're going to follow the evidence. Atlantic Magazine doesn't like that either. Because it says gentrification has long-lasting impacts on the criminal justice system that go far beyond police surveillance. As cities become whiter, so do juries. In Washington, for example, it's not unusual to have a predominantly white, if not all-white jury in a predominantly black city. I wonder, now tell me, how does that happen? How do you get all-white juries in a black city? Does it have something to do with people who report for jury duty? Does it? Here comes Mr. Butler. Quote, jurors often have different life experiences based on their race. And so if the defense if the defense is the police lied or the police planted evidence, that's something that an African-American juror might well believe or find credible. A white person might find that hard to believe based on that person's experience with the police. The public debate over how to best deal with gentrification often brushes over these tensions, focusing solely on economic impacts. No, we didn't brush over anything, you fool. There are some who say gentrification is a natural part of urban development, while others say local governments should do more to regulate housing markets. But there's one question cities haven't really reckoned with as they evaluate changing neighborhoods. Are they prepared to decriminalize them? Oh, I love that. I love that. In other words, are you prepared to continue to ignore black criminality even when there's a lot of white people around who don't want you to ignore it? Boy, all my neighbors, people moved into this where I stay with my brother. It takes them years to get used to the fact that when they call the cops because of vandalism or violence or harassment or threats, it just takes them a long time to get used to the fact that the same people who are responding to the police calls, one minute, the next minute, they're in front of a crowd telling everybody how we're not going to arrest our way out of this mess. And how we know that the only reason there's so many black people in Wilmington and hundreds of other cities around the country doing this kind of violence, mayhem, destruction, because they haven't had enough midnight basketball, enough free stuff in the morning, enough free stuff in the evening, enough free stuff at supper time. And we just have to kind of jigger our combination of free stuff. And when we get that right, oh, it's going to be beautiful. I'll tell you what, Spike Lee, this guy, and the guy who wrote this article, what's his name? Abdallah Fayyad. He's a editorial fellow at The Atlantic. I'll tell you what, Abdallah Fayyad, Spike Lee, Paul Butler, all the rest of you idiots who are trying to normalize this black on white criminality, consequence-free criminality. You guys might not know it, but I think we have some common cause. Listen, all you got to do, whenever you see a white person in a black neighborhood looking to buy something, maybe if they have strollers, just give them a copy of my book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. That will let them know about the enormous amount of hostility and violence that is now normal black on white in this country, and how so many white people, public officials, and reporters are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. Just give them that. Don't worry about The Atlantic. Nobody gives a damn about The Atlantic. Except for some college professors who subscribe to it as part of their office budget. Nobody gives a damn about The Atlantic. You want to scare white people out of those neighborhoods from ever moving in the first place? Give them that book. And then, when they do become victims of black criminality in their new black neighborhood, if they decide to move in after all, you can just shrug your shoulders and go, "We told you." Didn't you read Colin's thing in there about critical race theory, routine activity theory? Routine activity theory says that a white person in a black neighborhood can routinely expect to be the victim of black crime and violence. You didn't read that part in there. You didn't see where the city of Chicago had to pay $22 million because the city released a white girl into a black neighborhood. They should have known that releasing a white person in that neighborhood was an unbelievably dangerous thing. They should have taken her, said the judge, they should have taken her down to the zoo and put her in a lion's cage. That would have been safer than releasing that girl into the neighborhood in Chicago where she was taken up to the 7th floor of a public housing project, sexually assaulted and thrown out the window. She survived. Permanent mental and physical damage. $22.5 million. And the judge said it was because of routine activity theory. He could make that ruling. Papers in Chicago didn't have any idea what to do with that story. Good Lord, it was like panic in the newsrooms. Here's a judge saying that black people are naturally disposed to attack and harass white people. In other words, what every white person in Chicago knows about why they cannot go into certain no-go zones. These newspaper editors, man, they were doing the Tylenol, aspirin, they were getting headaches. I don't know if they were doing anything stronger. They probably were. Because they knew they had to print that story day 1, but they were never going to print it day 2, 3, 4, or 5. Because that kind of story sure gets those black kids angry.